Millions of them.
Millions.
Hey, there it is.
Millions of viewers. All right. We are live. And if anybody's watching on Facebook, on YouTube, well, this is the behind the scenes. And we're going to get started with the radio show in just a moment. And you'll get to participate and see how as they say, how the sausage is created. So,
yeah. And if you got any questions, you can put them in the, because I shared the webinar jam link, so you can put them in
if you're in the webinar, you can always drop in questions and we'll have some fun with that. And I think, Steve, we gotta prepare better on the webinar jam thing, because if we can get people in there, we can actually bring them in as guests and do all sorts of fun stuff there. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. So if you're joining us, we're going to talk about green screens today and how to do some cool stuff with green screens. So it should be pretty nifty stuff.
So I'll give you what do I give you? 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, okay. 3, 2, 1.
This episode of Video Marketing Madness is made possible by freevideoeditor.co. Are you looking to start making higher end videos and start doing some really cool editing, but you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on an expensive editor? Well, check out freevideoeditor.co. All the power of a powerful video editor, including 4K video, 3-point editing, green screening, and all that other fun stuff at the perfect price of $0.00. Heck, we even throw in a few extra goodies for you just for picking it up. So check it out right now at freevideoeditor.co. And on today's show, we're going to talk about green screening, which you can do in our free video editor. So you should be able to have a lot of fun here.
And this is where the jingle goes.
Jingle, jingle all the way.
3, 2, 1. It's the radio show about video marketing madness with Ray the Video Guy. And I'm Steve Sleeper on the Earn.show podcast network. Facebook page, Video Marketing Madness. Twitter, Video MKT Madness. Plenty of useful tips posted every day. Good stuff. And now he's primping himself. I can see him.
Right.
I can see him in the little inset box. You know, those little inset boxes. Unless there's 3 people on the webinar, you don't see them. For those of you watching the live hangout, I didn't know that before.
Oh, you know what? I did not know that either. That's
so you either see me or you know. But last week when we had Daryl, you could see all 3 of us.
Cool. So all of my antics while you're talking just aren't even seen by anybody.
No.
Darn.
No.
Well, that's all right. Hey, everybody, we're here to have some fun today, and there is nothing more fun than green screen. That's the worst thing I get. Nothing. There is nothing in the world more fun than green screen video. Forget Disney World.
Forget the escape rooms, roller coasters.
Forget having kids. Nothing is better than green screening videos.
Dogs and cats, chickens and ducks.
That's right. No, in the world of video, green screen is kind of the Disney World of production. So I'm going to coin that phrase. Green screening is the Disneyland of video production. And the reason I say that is because you can create a small world for yourself. See that little tie in there? That's what we call a segue. You can create a small world of your own just by using green screen video. Now, the problem, of course, is that people get very nervous about green screen video because in the old days, it was really, really hard to do well. In fact, if you ever go back and watch newscasts from the late 80s and early 90s when it started to become a big thing, you'll see, your weatherman would kind of have that funny color to him, and there'd be green fringe around him, and it was a nightmare back then. Whereas nowadays, it is really, really good, and pretty much anybody can do green screening. It just requires a few things that you need to know beforehand in order to make sure that you get the best image possible. And Steve, what do you think? What do you think of green screening overall?
Well, since I use mostly PLR videos, I don't do it a lot. When I first got into all the training stuff back in the Traffic Geyser days, I taught myself how to do it.
Nice.
And then, I probably did a couple things. And then, I haven't done it since then because there's PLR videos.
Yeah.
you know, that I use. So, so I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to put them in the show notes, and I'm going to go back and try to do some green screening again, since it's been a while.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit of history about the whole green screening process, because it's actually quite interesting, especially in the world of video. We're not going to go all the way back into talking about film and how that worked, but we're going to talk specifically about video. And back about, I'm going to say maybe 15, 18 years ago, before the real takeover of high definition video, before digital video cameras were big, everybody had the old-fashioned videotape cameras, and many people had VHS, or they you know, if you had a beta, or maybe you had 8mm. But with all of those types of video cameras, it was actually hard, but it was going to get a little bit harder to do green screening. And what I mean by that is, back then, because the cameras they weren't fantastic, you had to really have your lighting down in order to do green screening on video. And what I mean by that is, you needed to have a lot of lights. You needed to make sure that the lights were properly measured, so that you're getting the right amount of light on the background, the right amount of light on the person in the foreground. And it was just a real pain in the neck. But the cameras themselves, when you had a good setup, were actually pretty good at green screening, whether you were doing it live or putting it into an old primitive version of After Effects. You could do the green screening pretty easily at that point, assuming that everything you did up to that point was done well. Now, fast forward a little bit, we get past the old era of the analog video cameras, and we start getting into the era of digital video cameras. The most popular ones being the DV cameras, which use the little DV tapes. Now, you would think, as the quality of the cameras improved, as the quality of the image actually looked better, that you'd be able to do even more green screening because of this. But unfortunately, the way that DV cameras worked, they actually compressed video based upon the colors in the image. And so therefore, when you tried to green screen, it didn't have a lot of information to be able to pull the green screen out, which led to some really bad results. It was easier as far as lighting goes, but the quality of the green screening was just terrible. A lot of weird fringing around people and strange things were going on, because there wasn't enough color information left after the compression to be able to do that. Now, the cool thing was, you could use other cameras that compressed video in a different digital way, but they were a lot more expensive. You could go from a digital camera straight into a computer, and there were ways around some of the compressions, and you could do things there too that were actually pretty good. But for the average person, green screening was just not a very good option. It was actually worse in some ways than beforehand. Well, let's fast forward again, and we start to get into the era of high definition video, HDV, which is the same tapes as the DV tapes, but it's high definition, and it actually compressed your video in a different way, which made it easier to green screen again. There was also AVC, which is what you see in a lot of the more modern cameras, a totally different type of compression method, and that allowed you to do green screening really, really well. And the reason was, it actually compresses the image and not the color information. So all the color information is still there. There's enough to do a really good green screen out of that. And believe it or not, you can actually do better green screening using something like your iPhone than you could with a higher end camera back just a few years ago, because of the type of compression that it uses. And believe it or not, most of my videos that I do here, and I've got over to the side of me, I've got a green screen and I've got some lights around the room. But it's a smaller office that I have. I'm in my home office. It's a smaller one. And so most of the time, I actually just shoot with my iPhone. And the iPhone will do a really, really good job of capturing the video so that you can then green screen it. Now, we've actually got some nicer cameras here, but unfortunately, it's very difficult to use the nicer ones when you're the only person in the room, which is why I go for the iPhone. Control a lot more of that by myself without bringing in somebody else. Now, once you've got your image, because we're talking about using iPhones, we're talking about using modern cameras, DSLRs, it's much, much easier to do the green screening. But we still have to think about the way we set all of this up. Because quite frankly, no matter how good your iPhone is, no matter how good your DSLR is, if you don't set up your green screen system beforehand, you're going to struggle getting a good result. And believe it or not, like I said, I'm here in a small home office. I struggle with it every once in a while if I don't get it just right. If I'm being lazy and not, taking the time to light things properly. But what you need in order to do a proper green screen is a few different items. The first one of which is no surprise here. You need a good green screen. Now, maybe good is a bit of a relative term here, because you don't need to buy a super expensive green screen. You can buy a good. They sell everything from pop-up green screens that are kind of like a pop-up tent. So they're very similar to that, where you just fold them up and you open them and they just pop open into a big disc or a big square. And actually that's what I use over here right now is a big portable one. The other thing you can do is you can buy fabric, which is like almost like a thick bed sheet. That's the proper green color, and you can post that on your wall or hang it. The other option is you can buy a nicer green screen setup, which you can get at a place like B&H or on Amazon even, and that'll come with a big frame and it'll stretch it out for you. Another option is to get what they call a pull down, and a pull down is similar to those maps that we had when we were in high school, where the teacher would walk up to the front and like a window shade, he would pull down the map of the world or the map of the United States. Well, you do the same thing with this. You pull down the green screen, or you can pull down a different background depending upon what you're trying to do. And that makes for a very good green screen because it's very smooth. You don't have folds like you would with the fabric where, it was folded up. You won't have stretchy marks on it like on the pop-ups. So it's actually a really, really good option. And some of them use what is actually like a cardboardy paper, which you can destroy a little bit by walking on it, but it works really, really well. And then as you start to rip it and step on it and whatever, you just tear it off like a doctor would tear off the paper on his hospital bed, and you pull out a new piece. So it's very easy. You just keep pulling it out until the roll's gone, and then you replace the roll, and you get a really, really nice green screen out of that. Now, the second part of green screening is the lights. Now, in the old days, you needed a ton of lights. In a typical green screen environment, we would have about 4 different lights just pointing on the green screen. We'd have 3 lights on the subject, and sometimes a couple other lights involved as well. Plus, we would actually have an old-fashioned waveform monitor so that we could actually measure the amount of light, because we had to sit there and literally go, okay, the background is set here. Now bring our subject in, light our subject, and the subject in the background had to be relatively the same lighting, and it was a big pain in the neck. Nowadays, you can just kind of, do it by rule of thumb. For me, the easiest way to do it is to get a couple of fluorescent style lights and just point them at the background, and then have 1 or 2 lights that are pointing at the subject. I'm in a very small room. Difficult to get much more in there than that. If you're in a studio environment or a large area, maybe in your garage, you can actually do something even better, which is to have multiple lights pointing just at the background, 2 different lights in the front. One is what they call a key light. The key light would be a slightly harsher light that hits you in a it's fairly strong light that hits one side of your face, and what they call a fill light, which is a softer light that's going to hit the other side of your face, so that it actually gives you a little bit of definition, with one side being slightly brighter and the edges being kind of glowy. The other option to add in there is what they call a backlight. And what the backlight is, typically it's a smaller light that would be on it's much higher in the air and points down at the back of your head and shoulders. So it's not pointing at your face, it's actually pointing towards the top of your head and the back of, slightly to the back, but on the top of your head and the top and back of your shoulders. And what that does is that creates a really nice separation between you and the background, and makes it actually a lot easier to do the green screening. That's what it's called 3-point lighting, because you've got the key light, the fill light, and the backlight. And that's going to give you a really nice look to you. And then, of course, if you just use a couple of fluorescent lights on the background, you're going to get a nice even screen. And that's the one key to this all, is you want to make sure, even more so than the subject, that that green screen has a nice even light on it. You don't want to have hot spots and dark spots, because that's going to make it a lot more difficult. So you want to put, what I have is, I've actually got a set of old photography lights. They're the kind that look like a big, a big round scoop. And they used to have big incandescent bulbs in there. So they were basically giant round light bulbs. And I've replaced those with these giant curly Q bulbs. You know, the curly Q bulbs that we buy at the store these days to put into regular old sockets. Well, this is a gigantic version of those. And I put those in there to make a very soft light. And I use 2 of those to spread light evenly across the background. Another great option is, there are fluorescent tubes you can get, where, you know, the traditional, like, they look like the ones in an office building where you'd have a fluorescent tube above your head. And you put these in basically side mounted, instead of them being, you know, long ways across the ceiling. They take the ballast and they make it tall, and they put it on a pole. And then you can put one on each side and use these fluorescent lights to shoot in. And that's going to give you a nice even green screen. So there's a lot of different options. And again, if you're looking for any of this stuff, you can go to bnhphotovideo.com. You can check out all of these things. They've got the green screens. They've got the lights. You can even buy packages that have the green screen and all the lights that you need in one package for one price. In fact, if you can do that, because it can be expensive, that's one direction I would definitely go, is to purchase the pack all in one, because then you'll get instructions and everything else, and it'll work out well for you. But the big thing here is to make sure that that background is evenly lit, as even as possible, and then you light your foreground. Now, the other trick too is, make sure that the subject that you're going to be shooting steps away from the background. And the reason for this is, if you're lighting that background, that green screen, and you get your actor too close to that background, the green is actually going to spill onto him, because it'll reflect off of there and it'll hit his face, or it'll hit his shoulders or his shirt. And then when you go to green screen, those parts of him that are colored are going to start to disappear as well if you're not careful. So you want to make sure to bring the subject away from the screen a few feet. If you're in a small room, get them 3 or 4 feet away. If you're in a larger studio, do even more. You bring them 8 feet away from the background, and then light the subject. Now, the cool thing about that is, once you bring somebody away from that background and then you light them, you're not going to cast big shadows on your green screen or have big light spills on your green screen from the lights on the subject. So you kind of get a double good effect there. You're going to get the fact that he's not going to get the reflection on him, and you'll be able to light him without interfering with your green screen. Okay, so once you have all of this set up, then we've got to get into the fun part, which is shooting your video. You want to make sure that you shoot your video just like you normally would. Make sure there's nothing moving around to create shadows on your background, and just shoot like you normally would on any sort of interview. And once you're done with that, you're going to bring the video back into your computer. And now, this is where the magic really happens. You want to make sure that you've got a halfway decent green screening tool. Now, ironically, what I've found is that the one built into Final Cut Pro is actually really, really good. And so most times, as long as I've got decent lighting, that's the tool I'll use. Now, I have higher end green screening tools, but they're very complex. They're very difficult to use, and they actually take up a lot more resources. So if you can get away with using the built-in one inside of a program like Final Cut Pro or iMovie or Adobe Premiere, you're going to be able to get a really good result without having to figure out all these special tools and buttons and gizmos, and you'll be able to do it right inside the native program a lot faster. Now, if you don't have all the adequate lighting that we talked about, you can still do green screening. You're going to have to put in a lot more work on the software end, but you can get away with that. All you have to do is do the best you can on making that background as even as possible. And then when you get into the software, you just have to make slight adjustments. Choose various shades of green to key out. Make sure that it looks good. Check out the matte. Now, if you don't know what the matte is, in most of the softwares, now you may not see this in a program like iMovie or some of the lower end softwares. I may not have this feature where you can switch over to matte mode, which shows you the background as black and the subject as white. And when you look at that, you can really start to see, okay, look, over here in the background, we can see a little bit of white. And on the subject, we've got, holes in him, or he's kind of cut off on the head, things like that. So then you can go back in and make your adjustments until you have a really nice matte that you can see that has a very good white and black background. And so once you have all of that, you're going to have a really good image. But again, you're going to have to play around with this quite a bit. Now, at the beginning of the show, we talked about freevideoeditor.co. So if you don't have a green screening tool, you can actually go there and you can download our Shotcut video editor from there. And that will actually allow you to do some really good green screening. They added the green screening tool a couple months ago, and it's actually very, very good. And they break it up into two pieces. They've got an easy version and a more advanced version. And most of the time, the easy version is okay and does a decent job. The advanced version has a lot of other tools in there, but it's still actually pretty darn easy to use. So you can go in there and you can actually create some pretty good green screenings, even with tough lighting in there if you use the advanced tools. And they're not very difficult. Now, the big thing is you want to make sure that you choose your proper background. Make sure you're picking the green color. It's a little tough to explain this over the radio as opposed to a video, but hopefully you guys are getting the idea on this a little bit. What you want to make sure is if your tool allows you to select the green color, try to go, if your green screen is not perfectly lit and you see a slightly darker, slightly lighter areas, try to go somewhere that's in between. And then you can actually expand out how much you want to use, the strength of that green screen. So if you go into the middle and then move the strength out, you'll actually get more of those green colors. And if you've lit it properly, you're going to find that just one click and boom, it's going to be ready to go. These days, it's that easy. It works that well.
And that's what I found too, Ray, is, of course, Mike Koenigs was doing a video on all this stuff, just like you're doing right now. So I made sure I had everything set up correctly. I had Sony Vegas, and I just Googled how to do green screening in Sony Vegas. And, once I had my lighting and my background and everything else correct, shot it on a ZI-8. And, so it wasn't any big deal. And it was just pop, pop, pop. It worked really well. Once you know the buttons to hit, and you can just Google it, to get exactly the information you want as opposed to having to go through a knowledge base. So.
Yep, absolutely. And just to kind of mention some of the softwares that do this, as he mentioned, Sony Vegas, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut, iMovie, Shotcut, Screencast, or ScreenFlow. What's the other? Camtasia is the one I'm thinking of. Camtasia has it built in now. So there's a lot of different tools that are out there. There's even some standalone tools, if you do some searching, that you can download that you can do the same thing with. So there's a lot of great tools out there for green screening. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, and this is something I want to mention because it's becoming more and more popular right now, and that's live green screening. Now, some software packages will actually allow you to do green screen live while transmitting the video instead of recording it and then doing the green screen later. So for instance, one of the programs that I use when I do my Facebook Live programs is a program called Mimo Live, which stands for multi-input, multi-output. And it allows me to do my Facebook Live videos or YouTube Live videos with graph animations and other videos and things. It essentially turns it into a full-blown TV studio, which is really kind of cool. Almost like you have the lower thirds and all that. You can even do weather maps. They actually have weather maps in there to do weather if you want to. But one of the features they have in there is live green screening. And again, you have to follow those same principles. It's actually, it's much tougher to do live green screening than it is to go in and do it as a post-production. So you really want to make sure your lighting is good. And quite honestly, I mean, people are a little more forgiving of decent but not fantastic green screening in a live video. But if you can do it as best as possible, certainly do that. But it allows you to actually come in, you set your lighting, you pick your green screen source, and then live on the air, as you're doing your show, you're already going to have the green screen cut out in the background. So it makes it very, very cool to do some fun stuff. I actually haven't even done green screen with it yet, only because the green screen's over here, and I tend to use my camera over here, and so it's logistically not a big deal. Now, if I can get somebody in here to be assistant, then I can certainly do that. And at some point, we'll probably do a live green screening test and see how it works there. But just some very cool stuff. Now, some extra tips for doing green screening, because this is something you want to pay a lot of attention to. And the biggest one is don't wear green. Now, I know that sounds like, well, duh, but you would be surprised how many times people have showed up to a green screening session wearing green stripes, green flowers, a solid green shirt. Now, modern high-end software can actually go in there and distinguish between you wearing a green striped shirt in the background, but even that's going to be difficult. So if you're using basic software, it's going to be all but impossible to do that. So just make sure that when you shoot, you don't wear green and you don't wear anything close to green. In fact, if you could wear, bright white, if you could wear orange, if you could wear reds, if you could wear, bright blues, some of those things will definitely help. The closer to reds and oranges, the better, just because they're kind of the exact opposite of green, whereas some shades of blue start to get into the green area. So you definitely, blue is okay, but if you can do reds and things like that, that's even better. Whites are really good because as long as you're not getting the green spill on the white is actually very good because it's so different than green because of the luminance and everything. It'll make a big difference. So that's the one big effect. Now, if you need higher end green screen software to do more advanced things, there are options out there. The best one that I've used is Primatte, Primatte. And this one actually has a ton of really cool tools in there. Very difficult to use. I'm not going to lie. A lot of options. Runs kind of slow, but it's got a lot of power in there. And if somebody shows up with that, green flowered shirt, we actually had, we were interviewing people at a medical facility one time. And one of the ladies who showed up was wearing a green nurse's smock, but it had, blue nurse's smock, but it had green flowers all over it. And so she looked like a gunshot victim when we were trying to green screen her because she had all these holes in her. But, with a powerful tool like Primatte, you can actually go in and fill those holes. So it'll know, okay, this is not meant to be cut out, and it'll actually fix those things for you. But again, you're talking about a piece of software that I think runs about $900. So it's not a cheap investment. It's what they use inside of newsrooms and TV studios, things like that. But it's a very powerful tool that'll do a lot of cool stuff. Now, if you're into After Effects, Adobe After Effects, there's actually some really good green screening tools in there that go above and beyond what people use in typical video editing software. So if you wanted to use that, you can go into Adobe After Effects. They've got some good built-in ones, and they've got a lot of really good ones that you can buy and add to Adobe After Effects, including Primatte is one of their options in there that you can get. So there's a lot of good things you can do there. So with that, that's pretty much the basics of green screening. Steve, you got any questions about green screening?
No, I'm good. It's all in the setup. That's the thing. And, again, as I mentioned before, freevideoeditor.co, for instance, to learn how to green screen, just Google it.
Yeah, very surprising. A surprisingly good green screening program. It really is. Mm-hmm. I was kind of shocked at how well that did. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yeah, I played around with it. I didn't play around with the green screening, but I'm surprised at how well everything works in freevideoeditor.co. So.
Yep, it does a good job. But the green screening, we did a couple video tests with the green screen, and I was surprised at how robust the tools were.
Yeah, open source, free. Yep. Yeah, so that's why it's called freevideoeditor.co.
Yes, indeed.
So, do you have a Mindset Matters?
Well, of course I do.
Okay, well, I'll play the mindset matters here.
Okay.
Three.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, let me do a 3, 2, 1. I'm OC. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so for today's Mindset Matters, we're not going to talk about a book that you can go and download. We're actually, let's try that again. I can't speak.
And got to lay off smoking that crack.
I know, right? It's terrible stuff.
3, Ray can tell you. I mean, he knows from experience. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so for today's Mindset Matters, we're not going to talk about a book that you can go and download from audible.com or from Kindle, but we're going to talk more about podcasts. And the reason I want to talk about podcasts quickly is that there is so much amazing information out there that's going to help you business, it's going to help you with mindset, it's going to help you with finance, and it's going to provide you with entertainment even. And there's so much out there if you're willing to go out to iTunes and just search for podcasts. Now, some of my personal favorites aside from this one are Tony Robbins' new podcast, which he has out. Very, very good stuff. He actually plays some of his live events right there on the podcast. So he's got a lot of great information. Internet Business Mastery. That is a tremendous one that gives you a lot of great information. Pat Flynn has a lot of information for people that are doing online marketing, and you can learn a whole bunch of stuff from him. So I recommend that you go out there, check out some of the podcasts that are in your niche, even for entertainment, sports, comedy. They've got all sorts of things out there, but it's an untapped genre of things that you can really learn from. So I highly recommend get into iTunes or whatever podcasting tool you want to use and start searching for podcasts that are going to help you to improve your business. And again, Tony Robbins, Internet Business Mastery, Pat Flynn, 3 of my personal favorites. Tim Ferriss has a podcast that's actually very good. Jack Mize has a podcast that's really good. So a lot of great stuff out there. Gary Vaynerchuk has one. So you can check those out. So highly recommend it. Check out podcasts and make sure that you're finding things that are going to help improve your business. Very easy and, of course, free.
In fact, I think Pat Flynn is speaking at Podcast Movement next week, which I'm going to.
I can almost guarantee he is.
Yeah, I believe he is. A lot of those names sound familiar as speakers. So I'm looking forward to that. Grand Hyatt in Chicago. So that'll be kind of nice. Beautiful lobby there. Of course, a meeting room's a meeting room, but it's still a wonderful venue to go to a trade show. So
no, it's exciting. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. There's another video marketing madness for this week, the radio show about video. By the way, I'm not here next week.
What? Oh,
I'm at Podcast Movement. So, and so there, I told you I was remembering.
We'll figure something out, though.
All right. It's the radio show about video marketing madness with Ray the Video Guy. And I'm Steve Sleeper on the Show podcast network. Today's show made possible by
freevideoeditor.co. Leave off the M. No M.
No M.
If you want to start doing some of that green screening that we talked about today, then check out freevideoeditor.co. You can download the Shotcut video editor along with a bunch of goodies that we have in there as well and start making some video magic. Very, very easy to do. So there we go. Leave off the last M for magic.
Yes.
freevideoeditor.co.
The magic will come when you download it.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's it. Let's wrap it up with the jingle.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, that's the hangout, everybody. I'll get the show produced and up, and
yes,
we'll be good. You want to end the broadcast?
I will do that right now. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.